So thank you very much for doing this interview. First, please tell us a little bit about yourself and the reason why you came to Japan.
I am an associate professor at a digital content school here in Tokyo at Ochino-Mizu. I work part-time at Meiji University. I'm a father of 2 children and a husband. I live in Narima. I've been here in Japan for, I guess, almost 15 years now. My journey to Japan started many, many years ago. Actually, before I went to university. I graduated from high school and decided not to go to university and ended up working in Alaska on the fishing vessels.
Why not going to university?
At the time, there was an issue with my father and I I felt that I was going to show him, and not. My father had always insisted that we go to university. And, before I graduated, my father and I had a falling out, so I was going to show him by not going to university. I ended up on the fishing vessels in Alaska, which was quite the adventure. I did that for a number of years. I ended up in what they called engineering, which we didn't really engineer anything, but basically mechanics. And that's where I initially was introduced to the Japanese technicians and began working with the Japanese technicians, I believe, in my 4th year there. I'll never forget Yoshida-san. He couldn't speak any English and I couldn't speak any Japanese, but both of our bosses forced us to work together, which was quite interesting to say the least. But after a number of months, we developed a friendship, and he was the one who, I guess, sparked my interest in Japan and Japanese culture. And after doing work in Alaska for another year, I decided that my father was actually right and I should have gone to university. So I ended up in university and in international studies. I did, in my 3rd year, I did a 6-month study in Tokyo, study abroad in Tokyo, and I fell in love with Japan, particularly this city, Tokyo. And I went back and I finished my degree in education and sold everything I had. I sold my car, my TV, my stereo. I had 2 suitcases of clothes and hopped a plane back to Japan. I've been here ever since.
Okay, so next question. To talk about the differences between your city, your hometown, and living in Tokyo. So what are the biggest differences between the 2 cities?
The pace. Initially coming to Tokyo, there was so much to do and so much to see, and just so lively. I really enjoyed that as I was younger. But I'm from Seattle, and Seattle is a very green city, and I guess you'd say a lot of people are my pace people, to borrow a term for Japanese English, I guess. But the pace is much slower in Seattle. People are not in a hurry, and people are more approachable, I guess. So, while I love all there is in Tokyo, the more I go back home, the more I find it the slower pace and more relaxed atmosphere of Seattle to be more enjoyable or along my lines. As I get older, but when I was younger, I loved everything about Tokyo, all there was to do.
So there was like a rush in Tokyo.
Oh, yes.
This is in the 90s?
There's food. Well, no, it's just there's just all the Harajuku and all the different people and different things that people are doing and all the different events there are. I mean, you never want for something to do in Tokyo, but at any day, at any time, if there's something that you're looking to do, or to go see a show, or to a museum and see some wonderful pieces, or just going to Yoyogi Park and people watching is entertainment in of itself. So there's on that aspect there's a lot to do, whereas in Seattle it's not like that. People are very outdoors like, and they hike and fish and do things like this, but it's not like you can find something to do 24 hours a day every day in Seattle, although it is a growing city. It's not, doesn't compare to Tokyo. So when I was in my 20s, I loved that.
Okay, so now how about the education system? You as a teacher could give us a good insight on the differences between the education system in Japan and the education system in the United States.
Well, I think currently, especially at the Contents University that I'm working at, we're looking at changing the curriculum, and I've been researching a lot of things from North America or Western universities just to get an idea of what's going on. I read something recently from MIT, a very well-known school in the U.S., University of the U.S., and they're talking, a lot of the education there is because everybody is their own individual expert anymore. With the internet, we don't need expert lecturers to sit in front of us and give us information. We can, as long as you're able to understand what a credible source is, you can be your own expert. You can get that information necessary. So a lot of it now, from the research I've been doing recently, is more on independent studies and your ability to pull from many different disciplines or many different areas and create your own projects. Your ability to do work in multiple arenas in Western universities. That's what they're targeting. It's a lot more project-based, independent study where you'll have an advisor more than a lecturer, and you'll put together some sort of project that is based on whatever field you're interested in, and doing that. Whereas Japan, from my personal experience, is still in the more traditional role of expert and pupil, and where you're lectured and given information and expected to remember that information, and at the end take a test that shows your proficiency, or your, not necessarily proficiency with the information, but that you can recall that information. There are some schools that are moving a little bit away from that, but I still see a lot of that in the different universities I work with, and friends of mine also work with. There's still.
Which one do you think is better or more productive to the end goal, which is finding a job, graduating? The students should find a job, right? That's the whole goal. So which system will prepare them better?
Well, obviously your ability to be able to produce is going to be more advantageous when you're looking for a job. If you can actually show that you're proficient in a skill when you start your job search, you're going to have an advantage over those around you who might come from a good school but won't have the skills to be able to accomplish what that particular business or corporation is going to need you to do. If you're walking in going, I'm capable of running this equipment and doing this and filming this and editing these types of things, and I can work with these different types of media, versus somebody who's gone to a name brand school but studied something that's not necessarily relevant to what they're doing. I think it's going to be better that you're capable of actually utilizing the equipment.
Okay. Tell me, what do you think about the English education in Japan, in schools, high schools, or university? What is your opinion about that?
In all honesty, I think Japan is lacking in comparatively in the region. I mean, we have large international populations, particularly at the digital content school, but also you're getting larger and larger international populations within the universities, and I find that the international students can outperform the Japanese students and are far more comfortable with the language. And I think a lot of that's due to a massive amount of input. Reading and generally speaking, listening, the students get a lot of input. Grammar, there's a heavy focus on grammar. They're very familiar with grammatical forms. Generally, their reading comprehension is higher, but output is rather lacking. There's almost I don't want to say a fear, but there's definitely a tremendous amount of hesitation. I find I have mixed classes where I have international students where the Japanese students are afraid to speak because their level is, even though on testing we use TOEIC testing to level them, so they might level at the same thing, and thus they end up in the same class. But once they hear one of these international students just freely talking, whether the student is, accurate or not, the student is very comfortable in producing the language. They tend to kind of freeze up or be uncomfortable because they're overly concerned about their errors and whether they're going to communicate their ideas accurately. And that's just for communication, which is just such a critical part of our society anymore. Like a global society, communication is critical. And if you're freezing up and unable to do that, you're going to have some issues.
Okay. How about the image you had about Japan before coming to Japan? Did it change after you came, or is it the same?
And that's a wonderful question. When I was studying, as I mentioned previously, my experience started in Alaska with Yoshida-san and working with a fellow engineer. But when I was studying back in the U.S. in international studies, and I took a 6-month course in Japanese studies, and we read, Moriogai, Watanabe, a lot of traditional. I read Genji Monogatari, all 10 Tales, a lot of traditional writing. So my expectation upon landing was, everybody would be in kimonos and eat sushi every day. So I was quite surprised, of Tokyo and whatnot. But there's still, the politeness and the willingness. There was a moment, I had been here maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and I was supposed to go to meet with a gentleman. My professor from the United States had set an appointment with me to go talk to a Japanese gentleman about Japanese culture and economics and things. And I got off the train, and I was lost. I couldn't find where I was supposed to be going, and I couldn't speak enough Japanese to get by. And this older gentleman saw this, and he stopped me and he asked me, if I needed help. And I was like, yes, thank you, I'm trying to find this location. And it turned out he didn't know where it was either. So, but he did. He took me to the police station, and the police directed us, and then the gentleman walked me to where I needed to go. And I'll never forget, it was kind of up these stairs, and I thanked him, and as I'm walking up these stairs, he says, just a minute. And I turned and I looked at him, and he said, please remember one thing while you're here. You can't accomplish anything by yourself in Japan. and it was such a huge contrast in, being American and independent, and, it's the individual, and meism is such a big part of American culture, like I did it my way, or, I accomplished this on my own. And if you really look at it, most people didn't, but here, that was such a strong point, and that, people are very supportive and very helpful. So that was, something early on that I learned being here that was very important to me.
Okay, could you please give a message to the people, the foreigners, who are thinking about coming to Japan to work?
Whether it's Japan or any guy, definitely, get out of your comfort zone. Probably don't make my mistake. Don't come to Tokyo and stay in Tokyo for 15 years. I've traveled throughout Japan, but if you have the opportunity for your language ability and to have a better understanding of the traditional culture and the hierarchy there is here, which is still a very big part of this society. Everything's very hierarchical and how things operate. So I would suggest if you are coming here to work or to travel, try somewhere outside of Tokyo initially, and then it's a lot of the work and whatnot is in Tokyo. So it's always easy to come here, but for myself, I find it very difficult to go from Tokyo and all that I have, all the conveniences that I have here to the countryside where it's far more remote. But to start there, it would be beneficial to learn about the traditional culture and learn about the people and the language. And there's always Osaka and Kyoto, the people are a bit more friendly in that way. I don't want to say people in Tokyo are unfriendly, but I would say, down there, people will approach you, whereas here you've got to do more of that yourself. So, it's a lovely place. It's difficult at times, as is anywhere else you live. So I would recommend give it a try. If you don't like it, you can always go back.
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much for doing this interview.
お疲れ様です。ありがとうございます。